After playing The Elder Scrolls Online for so many hours, a lot of people want something to make the game feel a bit fresh again. One way that people do this is by switching roles. Going from one role to another is a great way to experience a new gameplay style and try out some new sets and skills that you wouldn't otherwise use. Well, my name's Doc, your host for all things healing, and in an effort to make that process a little bit smoother for you, I wanted to create a guide to help players transition from the DPS or the tank role into the healer role. Let's get right into this. I want to start by talking about arguably the most important and most difficult change you'll have to make when transitioning from one role to the other, and that's changing your mindset. DPS, I'll start with you guys. One of the nicest things about transitioning from DPS to healer is that your skill set does transfer over quite a bit. I mean, what is healing, if not just parsing on your allies? Obviously, that's a bit of an oversimplification, as a healing rotation is much more dynamic. There's no single rotation of skills on any build that is considered the most optimal for healers. The nature of healing is that you'll constantly have to shift what you're doing and adjust your rotation to make up for that shift. Things like heal check mechanics, kiting, allies taking damage, group movement, tank resources, and much more will all take up precious cast time that your team will also expect you'll use to keep a high uptime on important buffs to improve the group's sustain and damage output. It sounds like a lot, and to give it credit, it can absolutely be a lot depending on the content you're doing. The important thing to remember is that your priorities are keeping the team alive and keeping the team buffed. If you can do both of these things proficiently and consistently, you're already doing a great job. Also, another pro tip for DPS transitioning to healer is to remember that you're no longer in charge of reviving. An unspoken, but sometimes needing to be spoken rule of ESO is that it's the DPS job to revive allies. Remember that when you become a healer, because as much as your dead allies will appreciate your effort, your still living allies are relying on you to keep them healed and buffed. Finally, the last thing that I want to throw out there for my damage dealers is a small but important one, and that's not to freak out when you see how much inventory space your sets take up. Yes, tanks and healers have a lot of sets that they can flex into depending on the scenario, and that does result in a bit of a loss of inventory, but don't try to go get every single piece of every single healer set before you go and pick up a restoration staff. Start with some basic sets like Spell Power Cure and Powerful Assault that are good across a ton of different builds and content, and go on from there. Okay? Moving on, tanks, you guys are next. And I actually think tanks are in a better spot than they may think they are to move over to healing. You guys already have a lot of what makes a good healer. You've practiced dynamic rotations, you understand what buffs are expected of support roles, you've got a good sense for what your group is doing, you likely have a solid grasp of positioning and mechanics, and you may even have a couple support sets that you could use on a healer already. Really, where tanks need to shift their mindset is that tanking is a very different gameplay style from healing and DPS, and it's likely going to take a little getting used to if you've only ever played tank. Tanking involves a lot of blocking, placing enemies between you and the group, initiating fights, and things like that. A lot of these are good habits for a tank, but not so good for a healer. So, you guys don't necessarily have the same kind of mindset shifts that you have to make as a DPS would, but tanking builds some habits over time that you'll just have to be aware of and kind of move away from a little bit as you enter the world of healing. Up next, let's spend the next couple sections talking about things you can do while you're still a tank or a damage dealer to prepare for being a healer. First, let's talk about sets that you can farm. Now, this will be a pretty comprehensive list, but that doesn't mean you need all of these sets before you start healing. It just means that if you have these sets, you'll have a large variety of builds for you to support your team with. Starting out with our 5-piece sets, you've got Spell Power Cure. Found in the White Gold Tower, this set will provide major courage to anyone we overheal, granting a substantial weapon and spell damage boost. Yorvold's Guidance. Found in Scale Caller's Peak, this set increases the duration of all buffs and damage shields we apply to ourselves and our allies. Roaring Opportunist. Found in Kind's Aegis, and often paired with the Yorvold's Guidance set to create the Rojo setup. When completing a full heavy attack, you grant group members Major Slayer, which increases damage done to monsters by 10%. Powerful Assault. Found in Cyrodiil or from guild traders, when casting an assault ability, you grant group members an increase to weapon and spell damage. Master Architect, found in the Halls of Fabrication trial, when casting an ultimate ability, you grant group members Major Slayer for a duration that scales off of the amount of ult used when cast. Pillager's Prophet, found in the Dreadsail Reef trial, when casting your ult, you also grant ult charge to group members depending on the amount of ult used when cast. Then, we've got our two-piece monster sets. First is Ozazen the Inferno. Found in Vet Scrivener's Hall, this grants allies extra armor when overhealed and minor vitality when healed. Symphony of Blades, found in Vet Depths of Malatar, this restores magicka and stamina to group members when they fall below 50% of their primary resource. And finally, there's an arena weapon that I'd highly recommend picking up if you get the chance, and that's the Master's Restoration Staff, aka Grand Rejuvenation. Found in Dragonstar Arena, when you cast either morph of Grand Healing, you restore magicka and stamina to any allies hit by the initial cast of this skill. Again, please keep in mind that this is far from a complete list of every single set that you could possibly want or need as a healer, but if you have all of these sets, you'll be ready to tackle the vast majority of content in the game. Up next, let's talk about what skills you might want to start leveling. Now, I'm going into this assuming you'll likely have your class lines leveled already, so really I'm just focusing on the common skills that are found in weapon lines, guild lines, etc. that healers are typically expected to bring. In no particular order, we've got Combat Prayer, found in the Restoration Staff skill line. This is an AoE burst heal that also provides minor resolve and minor berserk to our allies, increasing their armor and damage done respectively. Illustrious Healing, found in the Restoration Staff skill line. This is a strong round-based AoE heal over time that can provide a lot of healing to our group, and is also necessary to proc a popular healer arena weapon that I just mentioned a minute ago. Energy Orb, which is found in the Undaunted skill line. This is a slow-moving but very strong AoE heal over time that also adds a great synergy to restore resources to our allies. Radiating Regeneration, found in the Restoration Staff skill line. This is a sticky heal over time that can be good for keeping a high uptime on certain sets, as well as proactively healing your teammates. Elemental Blockade, found in the Destruction Staff skill line. This is used to keep a high uptime on our backbar weapon enchantment, as well as help contribute a bit to elemental debuff uptimes. Overflowing Altar, found in the Undaunted skill line. This applies minor lifesteal to enemies in a very large radius, as well as offering a really strong health restore synergy. Echoing Vigor, found in the Assault skill line. This is a stamina-based sticky heal over time, like Regeneration, and it offers a lot of strong passive healing, and this is also commonly used to proc a popular healing set, Powerful Assault. Then we have Reviving Barrier, found in the Support skill line. This is a strong defensive ultimate when things start getting a bit hairy. Even if we never cast it though, we can still enjoy a 10% increase to our magicka recovery when we have this slotted thanks to the Support skill line passives. And Aggressive Warhorn, found in the Assault skill line. This is a really good offensive support ultimate that increases our allies' maximum resources as well as provides major force, which increases critical damage done. Okay, up next, another thing you can grab while you're transitioning is food and potions. When it comes to food, you'll hear in most of my builds that my recommended best in slot food choice is the Clockwork Citrus Fillet, which increases our health, magicka, health recovery, and magicka recovery. However, when you're starting out as a healer, I don't think you need to spend your precious gold or perfect row on such a high-end food. In the meantime, I'd grab the Witch Mother's Potent Brew recipe from a guild trader and use that as a less expensive version of the citrus fillet in the meantime. It still increases health, magicka, and magicka recovery, making it a great all-around food option for pretty much all PvE content. Then, potions are sort of similar in my recommendations. The most optimal choice of potion for most healer builds at the moment is the Heroism Potion, and I know that the Alchemy hybridization is coming with Update 51, but I don't think Heroism will stop being the most optimal choice for healers even after that goes live. Still though, Heroism Potions can be expensive because their ingredients primarily come from slaying dragons, which can be time-consuming in comparison to how fast we burn through them, so if Heroism Potions are a little too rich for your blood, feel free to use some simple spell power potions, or if you're watching this after Update 51, maybe give those mending potions a try. Up next, I want to go over a few add-ons that you can pick up to help out with your healing journey. I do have a dedicated add-on video that will go a bit more in-depth than I will here, but because this video is about swapping roles, I'm going to assume you've at least got some general add-ons downloaded already. Instead, these will be made specifically for healers. So to start, we have Merlin's Heal Helper, a very simple, straightforward add-on that gives you a notification on your screen when an ally's health falls below a certain threshold. Hodor Reflexes. There's a good chance you might actually already have this one, either for DPS tracking or ult sharing, but I wanted to include it just in case because it really is that useful. For healers, it allows us to share the status of our support ultimates like Warhorn, Atronach, Colossus, etc. to make it easier to coordinate with your group who should be casting what and when. Srendar. One of the most common questions I get asked about my add-ons is how I track the buffs I apply to my allies. Srendar is the answer to that. Purge Tracker. Sometimes part of a healer's job will be to use a skill that cleanses negative effects to remove debuffs from their allies. This add-on will help you keep track of when you need to remove a negative effect from your allies. And then Roaring Opportunist and Powerful Assault. These are two set tracking add-ons that will allow you to simply track things like cooldowns and if you've successfully applied these sets to allies. Now, I'm sure you probably already know there are plenty more add-ons you can download, whether that be for general combat, mechanics, buff and set tracking, etc. Though this should be good enough to at least get you started if you really want a strong start with your healing. Again, if you'd like to see more about add-ons, I have a more comprehensive guide on my channel that you're welcome to check out for more info. Okay, so you've got the sets in your inventory, your skills are leveled, your consumables are quick slotted, and your add-ons are loaded. What about everything else? Well, from there it gets a bit more complicated because things like your Mundus Stone, champion points, race, class masteries, and more can all change or not change from build to build. So instead of giving you some generic one size that doesn't actually fit all setup, I want to tell you about where you can find the answers to how you could build your healer. Well, firstly, in case you're new here, you are currently watching a YouTube channel that is almost exclusively dedicated to healing and support in the Elder Scrolls Online. I like to think I put out some pretty helpful builds and guides like the Doc's Complete Guide to Healing and ESO video linked in the description. I think they're especially helpful for those that may be new to healing or healers that do a lot of solo queuing like myself. However, if you don't vibe with my content or just get tired of the sound of my voice, that's okay, I won't take any offense. I would highly recommend checking out the Healers Haven Discord server. They were a huge help to me when I was first starting, and they have plenty of healers in that server who are even more skilled and knowledgeable than myself. I am in no way affiliated with them on any sort of official level. I simply just have a profound respect for the effort that they've put into building a helpful healing community. Between myself and Healers Haven, I think you'll be able to find pretty much anything and everything you need just about healing in general. Anyway, I think that covers everything we had to talk about today. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. Let me know which role you're transitioning from, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to help. Don't forget to check out the link in the description to follow me on stuff and join my Discord server. And before we head out, I also want to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters as well as my YouTube members. Thank you guys for all that you do, and drinks are on me. I think all I've got left to say is that I've been Doc. Take care of yourselves, be good to others, welcome to the best role in ESO, and I will catch y'all in the next one.